Afternoon. It is afternoon now. Let's go ahead and get started. So if everyone can find a seat, that'd be fantastic. So we're trying to scurry off the floor. The House was just released, and the Senate, I don't know where they're at. Anyway, well, hopefully they'll be here soon. So I'm Representative Dorothy Moon, and we have an action-packed Capital Clarity, and thank you so much for everyone who has showed up. This is fantastic. We have a program with some homeschool students this morning with some fun music, and then we're going to turn it just a little bit to a more somber issue with BSU students talking about diversity on campus. We talked about that last week or a couple of weeks ago, that we've been talking about this in the legislature as well, but now we've got some real stories to tie with that. And then finally, two of our representatives, Representative Ben Adams and Aaron Von Erlinger, will be coming here to talk about their service in the military overseas. So it's going to be a lot of stuff today. So I need Forrest, who's my homeschool student who's going to come talk. Oh, here you are, Forrest. Come on up here, please. Forrest, I don't know your last name. Thomas? Tomlin. Okay, so Forrest Tomlin's going to visit with you all for a minute, and then we're going to have some more music, correct?
I thought the music was going to be for 5 minutes of music and then a presentation, but if they wanted to do the music afterwards, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, all right.
You good with that?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Music after that.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Okay, Forrest, it's all yours.
Hello and good afternoon. As Representative Moon said, my name is Forrest Tomlin, and before I begin my presentation, I want to thank Lieutenant Governor McGeehan and Senator Zito for making it possible for me to speak at Capital Clarity. I also want to thank Representative Moon and Lieutenant Governor for putting Capital Clarity on every week. I've come to all but one of the Capital Clarity meetings, and it is always awesome to be an informed citizen. Additionally, I would like to thank legislators and citizens of Idaho for listening to me. Subject I'm going to speak to you about today is homeschooling. I'm 16 years old, so I'm considered a junior, and I have been homeschooling my entire life. First, I want to talk about the history of homeschooling. I'll talk about when it was illegal and then when they changed the law. Also, I'll give the history of Legislative Pi Day. Then I will show some statistics, and then finally I'll talk about my own personal experiences in homeschooling. If you want to know more about the history of homeschooling, there's an excellent book, The Politics of Pi, A History of Idaho Homeschooling by Linda Patchen. In 1984, a family in southwest Idaho made national news. This family, the Shippey family, was homeschooling their 16 school-aged children, and this was against the law at the time. Sam, Floyd, and Robert Shippey were all brothers, making the 16 children cousins. In an over 1-year battle, some of the Shippies were sent to jail, and many of the youth were sent to foster care and traditional school. Several weeks after arrest, the parents were released from the Payette County Jail with instructions not to interfere with the state's plan for educating the children. During the children's Christmas break visit, the children of one set of parents did not go back to school. On January 10th, 1985, armed deputies came to their residence and took the children away, kicking and screaming. Then, in 1990, the Boise School District started asking 2 families questions about their children. Eventually, 4 homeschool children were charged with habitual truancy. They were defended by a local attorney, Barry Peters, who is also a founding member of Idaho Coalition of Home Educators, ICHE. It looked like they wouldn't win the case, but they ended up winning in an appeal to the district court. What this case established was that parents did not have to answer questions from public school investigators. 2 years later, ICHE teamed up with Idaho State Representative and homeschool dad, Fred Tillman, to submit a bill to limit local school boards' control on home educators. At this time, Representative Tillman was the chairman of the Education Committee. The next year, ICHE started Legislative Pi Day to promote homeschooling among our state's legislators. They showed the legislators what the homeschoolers of the state were doing and showed scoring data from optional testing. This led to a bill in 2009 that unanimously passed the House and Senate, rewriting Idaho's education laws. This is really the culmination of the battle for the right to home educate your child that started 25 years earlier. Do you have that slide? Okay, so this is the actual text of the statute that was changed, 33-202, school attendance compulsory. The parent or guardian of any child resident in this state who has attained the age of 7 years at the time of commencement of school in his district, but not the age of 16 years, shall cause the child to be instructed in subjects commonly and usually taught in the public schools of the state of Idaho. To accomplish this, a parent or guardian shall either cause the child to be privately instructed by or at the direction of his parents or guardian, or enrolled in a public school or public charter school, including an online or virtual charter school, or private or parochial school, during a period in each year equal to that in which the public schools are in session. They are to conform to the attendance policies and regulations established by the Board of Trustees or other governing body operating the school attended. So I bolded the section that says a parent or guardian shall either cause the child to be privately instructed by or at the direction of his parents or guardian. This was an addition to the statute that basically made it legal to homeschool outside of, because you could still do private school, public school, and even parochial school. So, and then now I'd like to talk about the Legislative Pi Day. This event has been happening annually every year since 1993. It has been a great event to build bridges with our legislators. They get to meet homeschoolers face to face, and who doesn't like homemade pie? I am proud to have been a teen ambassador twice, in 2019 and 2020. Unfortunately, this year, Homeschool Idaho decided to scale down their Pi Day plans with a booth displaying. They had a booth displaying the always outstanding test scores, and they designed a neat cookbook with recipes from homeschool families. Hopefully, the legislators had an opportunity to get a cookbook last Wednesday. I was really disappointed that the student involvement was limited, so I talked to Lieutenant Governor McGeehan, and she organized this presentation as a way for me to get involved and share about homeschooling in Idaho. We have a few displays over here showing some of the talents and hobbies of homeschoolers. If you look at some of the displays later after this is done, at one, you can look at some of those displays. But you'll see that homeschoolers are not boring and are in fact socialized. And then I wanted to share some statistics. Okay. So from 1980 to 1995, it's on the side, that's nice, 1 to 1.5%, so around 400 to 600,000 of all the students between the ages of 7 and 16 were homeschooled. And then in 1995 to 2008, 2 to 2.5%, which is around 850,000 to just slightly over 1 million. And then 2008 to the present, it's actually started to jump a little bit, 3 to 5%, which is around 1.5 to 2.5 million. But these numbers are quite hard to get, it's hard to get an accurate number because many of the states don't, like Idaho, don't require homeschoolers to register with the school district. Next slide, please. And then we have some more specific statistics for the test scores, and basically specific to homeschoolers. There is a 10% gap in test scores between white and non-white students in public schools, while for homeschooled children, that gap is non-existent. Homeschoolers score 15 to 30% higher than public school students on standardized academic achievement tests. And boys, when they're young, they tend to have a short attention span, and it's hard to get them to do anything. But they score 87% on reading tests when homeschooled, and only 43% in public schools. Homeschooler scores stayed between 80 and 90% regardless of their parents' education. 66.7% of homeschooled children graduate from college, meanwhile 57.5% of public schoolers graduate. And then lastly, 24.5% of all homeschool children have enrolled at least one, if not more, grades above their age level. Now, I want to talk about my personal homeschooling journey. As I mentioned earlier, I've been homeschooling my entire life. I started using a curriculum my parents chose, and I was doing basically every subject you would normally do in a public school. During my 6th and 7th grade years, though, if we were doing grades, I went to a one-day-a-week classical co-op, which basically means you go once a week and meet with some other homeschool kids, and then you do the rest at home. And then more recently, I've been taking online college prep courses with parental supervision and have been able to start CLEPing college courses. And then I wanted to share a couple of my memories that I have from homeschooling. Ever since I can remember, my mom would take my brother and I to the store because she had to do shopping and we were homeschooling. And up until about 6 months ago, we had a Costco membership. They always have a price per ounce on like magnetic price tag that goes above the product. My mom would use me as her human calculator. I let on that I did enjoy it, but it felt good to know that my mom would rather have me solve the problem than use her smartphone. This is an example of me using my education in the real world. Secondly, most homeschool students will tell you that they like the flexibility homeschooling offers. This is 100% true. This last year, I used my flexibility to help a local candidate, Gary Childy, run for District 18 representative. Unfortunately, he did not win, but I did come out better prepared to run another campaign or run for political office myself. Thank you. As Mr. Childy's campaign manager, I set up a Facebook page and posted on it, designed and published a website, designed and ordered door hangers, organized door knocking and literature drops, and put together meet and greets. It was a great way to learn qualities needed in the real world, like organization, which I'm not particularly gifted in, diligence, and communication. It was an honor to serve on his campaign, and he also inspired me to run for precinct committeeman. It should probably make sense that if parents have the right to home education, that they also have the choice of what curriculum to teach their children. In this case, one family may believe that American history and learning about our founding fathers is important. Another family may place high importance on social justice ideology. That is the beauty of homeschooling. The parents get to teach their children values they want them to have in the future. But just a show of hands, how many people were here 2 weeks ago for the presentation by Professor Yinner regarding social justice ideology? Okay, quite a few of you. So now I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking a lot about college. And I'm thinking about what Professor Yinner said about social justice becoming infused in nearly every college. And he's correct. I've found a few colleges that I'm interested in going to. Liberty University, Hillsdale College, and Patrick Henry. But it seems like it's impossible to find any other colleges out there and that share my values. I know there are, I just haven't been made aware of them. Publicly funded colleges and universities have more money to advertise their websites, send out flyers and packs to soon-to-be high school graduates. They can accept more students, and the tuition is less for the most part. I feel like homeschooling is a great base to keep your values without being forced into beliefs. I look forward to charting my course in this world. I'm worried about my future and the future of many other young Americans. If we can reform the education system and continue to allow homeschooling, we can hold our ground and take back our country. Thank you again, Lieutenant Governor McGee and Representative Moon. I guess I stand for questions. Yes, if anybody has a question. Yes.
Hillsdale College.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I got an important question.
Okay.
Are you going to be running for governor soon?
I can when I'm 30 years old, so that'll be a while.
So, one, I'm not super educated with homeschooling because I did not put my children through homeschooling. I've always been under the impression that when children are homeschooled, that they're not really socially adjusted and more socially awkward. What's your thoughts on that, or your opinion?
Well, I was told that all my life, too, but I tend to think that that's untrue because a lot of homeschoolers do activities with other kids that are not part of their school. Like, I started running with the Idaho Christian Running Club when I was 7, so I was around kids 2 days a week, and then I started running for Timberline just a couple years ago. And But there's many opportunities for homeschool students to socialize with other kids.
Thank you.
Yes.
So my understanding, just to clarify for folks, is that homeschool kids can participate in sports with the schools that are in their district, is that correct?
Yes, if they're in the district, they can participate, yeah. Yes.
They have a graduation diploma for people when they complete public school. What kind of equivalent do you have for your employers or your college?
Well, I know that Homeschool Idaho does offer a diploma, like a graduation ceremony and a diploma, but there are several different ways. You can take the GED and get your general equivalency diploma. I haven't figured that out yet, but I know that I've heard of parents issuing their own diplomas, basically like graduated from Homeschool Academy or something like that. Yes.
So, as you look to go to the university of your choice, and you look around, how are you finding the response from the universities themselves to you being homeschooled as opposed to somebody who's gone through the public school system? Do they value your homeschool, or are you shunned?
There's not really much of a difference. I took a CLEP exam, so that put me on the list of colleges for them to send material to me, and it basically they don't really care. They just want students. So about 80% of colleges said that they have at least one homeschool student. So
Will you be around for questions afterwards?
yes, I would.
Okay, now, as far as the music goes, can you play a short song now, or do you want to wait and play at the end? Because we have other speakers. What would you like to do? Because you were playing an intro, which was great, but
We would love to sing the national anthem with you.
perfect. Okay, let's do that. That'd be wonderful. Forrest, thank you. And Forrest, you'll be around for questions afterwards. Thank you. Now that's a way to start. That's the way to start a meeting. Okay, that's fantastic. And Forrest, after hearing you today, I'm having some hope for the youth of America. So that's good. So now we're going to segue into a little darker subject, I guess. Anyway, I know that Benjamin Cheff is here and Tanya O'Malley. They're the back here. I don't know if you want to come up one at a time. Okay, Benjamin's going to come first. So the other day, we were privileged to have many students from BSU come and speak with legislators at the conservative agenda meeting that we had on Tuesday at 4:30. Little beknownst to most of us, they were going to be here, or we would have had a lot more folks to see and hear your testimony as to how you've been treated on campus. I'm going to let them go ahead and start, and it's very excellent speaking that they're going to share with you, and we'll hold our questions till the end of both of you, okay? Sure. Thank you.
So I wasn't homeschooled, so this is going to be a little bit less of a good presentation. I don't know how to keep this thing up, but anyway, I was the former chair of the. Again, I wasn't homeschooled. Sorry, Forrest. I was the former chair of the Boise State College Republicans at Boise State University. My fiance is the current chair of the Boise State College Republicans, and she is studying biology, pre-med, and pre-law. She took a 300-level genetics course, and I'm going to talk about that first. And I had 2 days to do this, and she sent me this PowerPoint, so I don't have it up on the screen for you, but if you want, I can send it out to you guys. But in a 300-level genetics course, her teacher, her name is Crystal Ivy, began one of her classes, by saying, today I'm going to speak to you all about a topic that is sacred ground to me, and it's basically gender is a spectrum. And I expected more groans from that, but that's okay. So she talks about sex versus sexuality versus gender, and talking about how it's a biological categorization based primarily on reproductive potential, okay? And again, I think it'd be better if I just send this to you guys. There's a lot of notes on here. It's really unbelievable that this is being taught in a gender course, a genetics course, pardon me. They talk about intersex, they talk about the spectrum, and I know it's really hard to see, but I mean, they've got, pink rainbows and all that. So I'm going to send that in. I really, I don't want to speak too much on that. I want to speak more about my experiences. But I don't know how many of you have heard of the tunnel of oppression. The tunnel of oppression is something that goes on campus. And it's okay. What they do is they talk about oppressed groups in America, basically. I've been twice, and this was 4 or 5 years ago, but they talk about how fraternities and sororities are just about rape culture. Christians want to subjugate Native American Indians. Donald Trump is racist. All heard that before, I'm sure. One of the things that really struck me is their absolute hatred for white people, especially white males. They had one particular event, and I apologize, Dorothy, I'm kind of blindsiding you with this. I didn't talk about this the other day. But they had an event where you walk through different stages. So there's like 6 different rooms, and you walk in single file. And the moment you walk into this one particular room, they tell you to sit down. And then I'm going to assume his gender, it was a boy. He walked in and started screaming, "Everyone get on the floor," and he's holding a fake AK-47. Ironic, because most school shootings don't occur with an AK-47, but whatever. And he says, "I can shoot all of you because I'm white and male, and the police officers will come and buy me a cheeseburger and take me home." Really, really fun thing to say. And we, as the Boise State College Republicans, tried to, with YAF and Turning Point USA 3 years ago, I believe, tried to do a what would you do scenario. Basically the same thing, but we would tell our audience what was going to happen, and you could be in the room, and we would have a school shooter scenario, and then you would have the opportunity to respond how you would like. The school shot that down and totally allowed the tunnel of oppression version to occur because they didn't want guns on campus. That was their claim. We weren't going to have guns on campus, but neither here nor there. Some other stories I want to tell you guys about. I am an electrical engineer currently at Micron, but when I was studying, one of my professors, an electrical engineering professor, started talking about climate change. I don't know why he's talking about climate change. He's an electrical engineer, but I asked him some questions. They weren't hard questions, just challenging questions. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's carbon dioxide? What's the problem? So on and so forth. And his response wasn't an answer. It wasn't more questions. It was the fact that you're even asking these questions means you should be expelled from this school. That's verbatim. Yeah, really, really fun. What were some? Oh, yeah. So the Honors College is permeated with this SJW garbage. They have something called a Friday Forum, which I don't know if they still do it, but a few years ago they had, every Friday you'd come in, you could talk about a specific topic. They would have a guest speaker sometimes. One time they had a guest speaker who started a group on campus called Not Silent Because. Now, Not Silent Because is an organization that tries to deal with sexual assault, but not deal with it in helping the victim. The only way they help the victim is by helping to accuse the suspect, right? And these people did not understand the definition of consent. Granted, that's a hard line to define. Dr. Ruth Westheimer defines it as when someone is in your bed. That is the definition of consent to her. But they, when asked about this, and when they confirmed that Dr. Ruth Westheimer was an expert, said, "Oh, I've never heard that before, and I disagree with it." Okay, well, you haven't really done your research into this, but they were perfectly happy to accuse white males for their toxic masculinity. And they would never provide the same support for a man who was accusing a woman. And the Honors College fully backs this up. They, at honors orientation, repeatedly shamed white males and Americans in general by talking about how the atrocities that were committed to the Native American Indians. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there were some horrible things. I know that there were some horrible things that we did. I know there are some horrible things that they did. This is history. It's not perfect. So those are kind of the highlights of what I wanted to talk about. There are a litany of other things, but again, I had 2 days and I didn't recall everything that happened from 6 years ago. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And that's, oh yeah, yes ma'am.
Yes, I just want to make a comment, because I am 56% Native American. However, I don't see two wrongs making a right. So just because damages were done to my people, you know, my grandfather was born and raised in Indian reservation. He didn't believe that way either. He believed that, yes, that what they did to them was horrible, but we don't go around lower ourselves to their level.
Absolutely.
So, you know, this is just appalling to me what you're telling me, because I have a son in college right now, so I'm like, I want to take him out right now. So you know, I'm just like, what in the world are colleges teaching us, teaching our children? This is ridiculous. And I don't want him to get poisoned, but then what are the options for him to get, you know?
I don't want to use this as a soapbox, but I totally agree with you. I think our education system, it should be a state of emergency. What they are teaching us, like the fact that we're talking about gender as a spectrum, the fact that in electrical engineering courses we're discussing politics, it's enraging. I had a teacher talk about how he doesn't want to see certain students anymore because they're so bad, so he passes them. Like, I mean, this isn't... I mean, that's not white privilege, but it's still disgusting to me. You know, this is our nation right now. And Forrest, you were talking about looking at different schools. I pity you, man. Like, I'm not in a bad way. Empathize is what I probably should have said. I don't think there is another option. I think we need competition back in the marketplace, and it's not there. And I'm terrified for you.
Okay, there's
So.
Tanya down here.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll be around for questions? More questions. Okay, Tanya? Come on in. So Tanya's story is something else. I'll just let her speak her truth. Okay, come on up. You
Thank
got
you,
about
Dorothy.
8 minutes, 9 minutes, okay?
Thank you. Hello, I am Tanya Umley, and first I want to thank all the organizers of this event and for letting me speak here, and thank you everybody for coming over and being interested in the subject. So I immigrated to the United States from the former Soviet Union in 98, excuse me. And I graduated from the university in my homeland. But when I came here, I decided to get an American education. So when I became a Boise student last year, then it was my second round with American schools. And my experience was vastly different from the first one I had when I just came to this country. I decided to study nursing, and I enrolled into the university, got the program, and when I was looking through the program, it really stunned me what was the amount of, I call them brainwashing subjects versus the subjects we needed for our future profession. I will give you an example. As future nurses, we have only 2 semesters of anatomy and physiology, but we will have 8 semesters of diversity, inclusion, management, fairness, and subjects like that. How is that possible? When I took the calculator and looked it up, I realized that if those subjects would be removed from the program, students could graduate 1.5 years earlier and save tons of money. Each student could have a brand new car paid for by the time of their graduation. And those subjects are so poisonous. I could see that because in my own country, I went through 15 years of brainwashing and conversion. I knew Marxist conflict theory like my own palm, because we were taught it from our first class to the last year of university if you chose to go for higher education. But I would never expect that that type of education, indoctrination, I would say, would become norm in American schools. I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. Our TV, newspapers, all news outlets were highly censored. But we were listening to the Voice of America, to Deutsche Welle, and we knew that the world was living, the Western world was living different lives. But we always hoped, we always looked over, and we hoped that maybe we can escape, maybe we can change our own country. And America was the icon of freedom. It was the world where people could work hard and could achieve their dreams honestly, without bribes, without lies, just straightforward, hard work, and maybe a little bit of luck. Yes, luck also counts. And it is very, very scary to me to see what is happening to the education now and how the young generation gets poisoned, because the schools really bake social justice warriors with the speed of light. And since they're using Marxist conflict theory, educating kids and young adults, they divide everybody into groups. There is no more unity. There is no more question of unity because there are just small groups divided by gender, by race, by sexual orientation. What they teach is scientifically not true and not accurate. For example, I will quote a little paragraph from Sociology 102, which is called Social Problems. There are 17 chapters in this book, and they go about literally every aspect of life. And they say that you are always a victim. You're a victim as a woman. You're a victim if you're a person of color. You're a victim if you're an immigrant. By making this idea, like putting this idea into people's heads, they take away your opportunity to develop, to become a better human being, to succeed, because victims have no power over their lives. And that's what they do. This is so wrong because instead of finding common ground, for example, love for this great country, love for Constitution, appreciation of the opportunities we all have if we perform, they take it away from us and they say, you're a victim. You can only hope for this system, but this system is not good. You have to destroy it. Virtually, after each chapter, they tell you to go and destroy the system any way you can. Let that sink in. They say that socialism is great. You will have free education. You will have free medical care. That is lie. That is a lie. I lived in a socialist country. Yes, our education was free. But they forget to add that once you get educated and you go to work, you will not be paid. You paid pennies on a dollar. You can never. It took my father, who was a dean at the university, one of the best universities in Moscow, Russia. It took him 12 years to save up money for a car. And it wasn't a Ferrari or Mercedes. Our medical care was free, yes, even dental, especially if you want your teeth to be pulled out without anesthesia. Because if you want anesthesia, you have to bribe the doctor since they don't have it on hand unless you pay. Everything what they taught me at school about socialism here in America is a lie. It's not a great system. It's extremely unfair. And yes, you're equal. 90% of the population are equal in their poverty. And 10% of elites are also equal, almost, between themselves in their luxury. In our social justice book, again, I'm talking about gender now, they were saying that gender is a social construct. It's only an idea. There is no scientific proof that men and women are different. And gender is used as a tool of oppression. And if we want, that's word-to-word quote, if you want to fight oppression, you need to fight gender and eliminate gender itself. How are you going to do that? This is so ridiculous. And we need to fight. We need to fight for the kids. We need to fight for our future. We need to fight for having real education in schools.
I just want to thank Tanya for being here today. For those of you that don't know, she drove all the way from Twin Falls to be here today to speak to you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And also, Tanya, thank you for your courage and your bravery to stand forward. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And I know that America, please believe it, even those young people who went to American schools, believe it, you live in the best country in the world.
Yes. Amen. And also, let me thank Ben for being here today, too, and speaking to us. We appreciate your bravery as well. Thank you. And now we get to hear, well, before we move to the next segment, I wanted to just announce that in preparation for our mock legislative committee next week, those who came to us and offered to express an interest to serve as a legislator on the committee was exactly the number of committee members that we were seeking. So all of you who reached out to us will be appointed to the committee, and we will be connecting with you and giving you some instructions. There will be a legislator, a state representative that will be chairing the committee to help through the process. And we will also, in advance of the committee meeting next week, which will be solely dedicated to this great topic that we'll be discussing, we will give you the legislation in advance so that you can read through it. And to the members of the public, also plan to show up 15, 20 minutes early next week to also see the legislation and be able to sign up and testify if you'd like, okay? So, with no further ado, those brave men and women who are there to fight for our freedom and our liberty and to push back against the communist and the socialist agenda. We're very proud and honored to have two veterans with us today who are newly elected to the House of Representatives. And so they're here to speak to all of us about their efforts to secure our freedom, our liberty, and to push back against this agenda. So please help me welcome Representative Von Erlinger.
Well, hello, everyone. Very nice to see you all here today. Thank you for coming. And, you know, I was asked to speak, or asked if I wanted to initially, and had to think about it a while. I don't really talk about my military service all that much, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to come and speak about, you know, what it was like in those early days of the global war on terrorism. So I was and again, for the record, I'm Aaron Von Ellinger, representative of District 6. I was an Army airborne and air assault qualified infantryman with the 101st Airborne Division. And I joined, after my junior year in high school in the delayed entry program, and ended up leaving 2 weeks after I graduated from high school in the year 2000. Did my training at Fort Benning, Georgia, all infantry, one station unit training, and then also airborne school at Fort Benning, Georgia as well. Then I was assigned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne Division, where I was with the 1st Battalion, 187th Infantry Regiment. So it wasn't long after I arrived there, I went to air assault school. And for those of you who may not be aware, airborne school is where you learn how to jump out of a perfectly good airplane and somehow survive. And then air assault school is where you go learn to rappel and fast rope out of helicopters in combat type situations. So it wasn't long after air assault school that the horrific terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001 hit us all. And my unit, my battalion, the brigade really, was called upon as one of the first units to invade Afghanistan after 9/11 in 2001. And that was a very serious situation. I was 19 years old, and there wasn't really anything to judge the experience of what may happen after besides the Soviet army in Afghanistan, where they spent 10 years in their own disaster. But I've always been very proud to be one of those first people to go defend our nation after 9/11. One of the first Avengers, as I've always considered myself, and the other men that did that. But, you know, over the years, I'll admit that pride has went away in some aspects, I suppose. I never thought back in those days that we would be over there coming up on 20 years. I always thought, you know, we had our Vietnam, and we would never make that same mistake again. But I was wrong. I thought that we would spend maybe a year, 2 years over there cleaning things up, doing what the people wanted, you know, and back in those days we had like a 90%, over 90% approval rating for military action in Afghanistan, and that is just simply unheard of. And as the years went on, that public sentiment waned, of course. And our leadership is what has failed us. And I came out to speak here today because somebody needs to point out what has gone on. You know, General Colin Powell, he is a Vietnam veteran. And he, after the experience of Vietnam, came out with what is called the Powell Doctrine. And it's a list of 8 or 9 questions that we must ask ourselves. Is this mission of vital national security interest? Is it a threat to our national security, basically? Do we have a clear, attainable objective? Have the risks and costs been fully and frankly analyzed? Have all other nonviolent policy means been fully exhausted? Is there a plausible exit strategy, most importantly here, to avoid endless entanglement? Have the consequences of our action been fully considered? Is the action supported by the American people? And do we have genuine, broad international support? And I think we have really gone off course from that, obviously. We went into Desert Storm, 1990, 1991, took care of business, got out, because they remembered what it was like to be in a never-ending war. And that's what we're in here doing now. It is theoretically possible that I could have a son fighting in Afghanistan now. I'm glad that I don't. But, this war, these wars over the years, it's easy to get complacent and just forget about them. I'll admit, for my own well-being, I stopped watching the news about it, even really thinking about it as much as I can. It was just ended up being such a wasted effort after so much. But what we have now, the casualties alone from Iraq and Afghanistan, the coalition, mostly American, but also included in my numbers because they deserve it, are the UK, Germany, Italy, Canada, and France. 13,878 dead. All young men and some young women that never got to return home to their parents. Over 150,000 wounded and or injured. A lot of lives ruined with these wars, and it's something we have to take very seriously, in my opinion. Recently, the Afghanistan papers came out. I don't know if you've read those, but I would certainly suggest that you do. And that basically stated that, it began with a federal agency interviewing more than 400 people involved, including generals, ambassadors, diplomats, and others about their firsthand accounts. And the documents revealed that all these high-ranking officials were generally of the opinion that the war was unwinnable, but kept this hidden from the public. All those mothers and fathers that are sending their kids out to fight for this country, they were deceiving the American people. And as far as I know, there has been not a single politician or general punished for this at all. And every data point in the strategy became self-validating because it was altered to present the best possible picture to you. And so, the Army has an acronym for leadership, the 7 basic values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And, I just find it to be repugnant and absolutely despicable that there hasn't been really, maybe 1 or 2, but really any generals all these years that had the integrity to come out and say to everyone in an interview or whatever that, hey, what we're doing is wrong and what we're doing hasn't worked. They never had the guts to admit that. And I find that to be absolutely just repulsive. And, people, they want their 30, 40-year pension, so they don't say anything. And that needs to change. And again, I'll sum it up here. I'd just like to thank you all for coming out. And we owe it to the American people. We owe it to you, the people who sent their kids out to war, to do the right thing and stand up for the right thing. And believe me, I am not an anti-war person. I am as patriotic as anyone can possibly be. You can ask anyone who knows me. If a country needs a good shellacking, I am right there if it's justified. But this can go on no longer. In 20 years, not every country in this world can be saved or even improved upon all that much. And it's something that we need to realize as a nation. But thank you all again for coming out. I appreciate it, and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you so much, Representative Van Ellinger, and thank you for your service and your bravery. The next gentleman I'd like to introduce to you all was someone that I met when my first year as lieutenant governor. I was invited to speak at an event at BSU, and some of the topics were kind of difficult. But he came up to me afterwards and he said, "I know that Jesus has been with you this day." And that meant so much to me, and I got to know him, and as he shared some of his experiences with me serving, I did everything I could to encourage him. And even when came to when he decided that he wanted to get involved in the political process and run for state representative, and I was so happy and proud to be able to support and endorse Representative Ben Adams. Please help me welcome him today.
Hello, everyone. This is my first time speaking in this room, so this will be fun, right? It's new every time. So I am I went to Afghanistan about 10 years after Representative Von Ellinger got there. I'm a little bit younger, maybe a little bit, we know. Anyways. I grew up as a missionary kid in Eastern Europe. So I can attest to everything that Tanya said in her earlier speech. And when we came back to the States, I was just in my formative years. 9/11 happened, and once I graduated from high school, I thought, well, we're still in all these wars. I bet if I join, we can end them. So I joined. The only person that we hadn't captured or killed that had anything to do with 9/11 at the time was Osama bin Laden. I joined the Marine Corps, and I'm telling you, I will never regret that decision. I proudly served my country. I love my country. But there is a verse in the Marine Corps hymn that says, "First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean." There are bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. who have made that impossible. I did my first tour with 3rd Battalion, 8th Marine Regiment. I love that unit. "Fortune favors the bold" was the motto. And here we are. Well, my first deployment was in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and we conducted kinetic operations, highly kinetic operations. I was a fresh 20-year-old Lance Corporal. I didn't know anything except for what I was told to do, and I knew how to pull a trigger. Well, after being there for 5.5 months, I came back. We had accomplished our mission. We had fought the enemy. Anyone who shot at us was the enemy. We had disrupted their supply lines. We'd stepped on a lot of IEDs. I came back. I had lost one of my mentors who had been shot through the neck and left his 8.5 month pregnant wife behind. Thankfully, I married a wonderful woman who sustained me, along with God. "11 months later, I went back again, this time a corporal. My eyes were open. I was an operations watch chief for a 4,000 square mile battle space. In 2011, that first deployment, it had been the surge under President Obama. 2012 was the drawdown. And boy, was it a drawdown. We replaced 4 units of the same size with 1, but we did not reduce our space. This is along the Pakistan border, not friendly territory. A medevac, if you were to get injured, would take approximately 30 to 45 minutes to get to you. I lost 3 Marines on that deployment. And my eyes were opened again because they weren't killed by the Taliban. They were killed by a sex slave of one of the police chiefs that we were propping up in the region. The machine is real, and eventually it just goes. And it's easier to hand it off to somewhere else. Well, I came back from that deployment, and we said, mission accomplished. We fought the enemy. Oh, I forgot to mention, Osama bin Laden was killed in between my 2 deployments, and it never ended. We spent $2 trillion. $2 trillion. We've lost coming up on 2,300 U.S. service members in that country in the last 20 years. When we got there, the Taliban had outlawed opium growth. They produced roughly 10% of the world's opium. Now they produce over 90. Again, eyes open. I love this country. But we're a federalist system for a reason. Because when the top centralizes, they do what they want. Smedley Butler. War is a racket. And he won a lot of awards for fighting in those wars, but he knew. Eisenhower told us, beware the industrial machine. Well, it's going to come home to roost if we don't take care of it. And so this session, I proposed legislation called Defend the Guard that would force Congress to reclaim their war powers from the executive where those powers have become centralized. And it was killed in a voice vote in a committee room in this building. No bill, no hearing, no nothing. And just so you know, I am the most recently deployed legislator in this building. I've seen it most recently. And I can tell you that the pipe dreams that were told to us that Afghanistan was going to turn into a Dubai is a lie. It's a lie. They dig holes for their irrigation from the river. They go to the bathroom in their fields because they don't have any toilets. That is the majority of that region. We didn't bomb them into the Stone Age. They were already there. I encourage you to call your representatives, call your senators. This issue is only going to get worse. The longer we wait, the harder it is to turn the tide. I love this country too much to sit down and watch it get flushed away in some other country. I'm a proud service member. I would stand up for my country any day. I believe in just war. Just war. These are no longer just wars. Don't get me wrong, 2001, we had a bone to pick and we picked it. But by the time 2010, 2011 rolled around, the common discussion was, you think this is ever going to end, or are we just going to be here forever? Well, it's 2020, 2021 now. It's been 20 years. And I can tell you that the American people are done with it. The veteran community is done with it. The only people who haven't realized that are the bureaucrats at the Pentagon. Again, all is not lost. I know I come off as a little intense. I apologize. Can't help myself. I know you guys, I'm probably over my time anyways. Thank you so much for coming. Stay motivated, get engaged. Let's fix this country. From Idaho.
Thank you so much, Representative Adams. Wow, I don't know which week has been the most intense and best bunch of patriots I've ever seen as I have today. This is fantastic. I would like for you to go look at the Transportation and Defense Committee meeting where Representative Adams presented his bill. What day was that? Last Friday. Okay, last Friday, go watch it. Sit down, make your dinner, and watch that. And when they do the vote by aye or nay, you can hear a lot of audible ayes, one nay. And it's definitely at the discretion of the chairman, and I wasn't there, but based on what I heard on audio, it was supported by a majority of the committee. So that's one thing you'll learn, is that in a committee, we need to call for roll call votes on all votes. So we know how everybody's voted, not go with the discretion of one chairman. So anyway, it's a fantastic bill. I don't know if there's any way to get that through again. But again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's nice to get to know my colleagues a lot better. All the legislators, please stand up in the room. Again, thank you for taking the time to come today. And thank you all for showing up. Next week is going to be a hoot. I just know it is. It's going to be wild. Thank you and have a great rest of your day. Next week is going to be the mock session. Yes.